Hello, welcome back to my channel. If you're new, it's wonderful to have you here. Thank you so much for joining me. I'm making an outdoor meat drying rack because I'm going to be making some Chinese style meat that needs to be dried out in the sun. So what you're going to need is 12 pipes in total, and I've got 4 pipes depending on how big you want to make it. These are the measurements for mine. So the big ones are 58 centimeters. Then you need 4 small ones. These ones are 28 centimeters, and my medium sized ones are 42 centimeters. And then you're also going to need, if you're not lucky like me, which I've salvaged these off the bottom of some shelving, I've got 4 of those, and that's a 4-way pipe. You're going to need 4 of those and 4 3-way connector pipes, which look like that. If you haven't got these ones, then you're going to need 8 of this particular one. I'm taking some of these cable ties, which are 100 millimeters by 2.5 millimeters, and all I'm doing is I'm joining 2 of them together like that. Make sure when you're joining them that you've got the flat edge like that, ready to just be inserted in there, and then you can pull them tight. And what I'm doing is I'm placing them around this section of the wheel, just in case they snap with the weight of the meat. So I'm just going to pull those tight, and I'm trying to make these little pieces stay on the inside of the wheel. So holding it in place and then just tightening like that. I'm doing that to the 4 wheels, and then just trim all the little pieces off. To assemble it, I'm taking one of the long pipes and I'm putting it into the top, so the wheel is at the bottom like that, and you do that to all 4 of them. So we've got all of them connected. I'm taking one of the short one, and I'm going to be placing it in, if you're looking at the wheel like this, I'm placing it in the right hand side like that, and then we attach one of the other wheel that we've just connected, which is like this, and we just attach that together. So we've now got something that looks like that. Then do the same to the other 2 wheels by connecting a small pipe between those 2. And now take the medium length pipe and then connect it to the other side on both your pieces. So we've got our bottom frame completed like that. And now we're going to take the 3-way connectors and put them on top like that, making sure that you've got them going in the direction of the connecting pipe that's going to come in. So we've got a medium one going in this side and the short one going between these 2. I'm repurposing some things that I've managed to salvage. So I got this 1.5 meter zip off my mosquito net that was around my gazebo, which I have now replaced, and I'm just using an old sheet as well. And I bought this insect mesh from Temu, which I'm going to be using. I've got my material all laid out, and now I'm just marking in at 10 centimeters, and this is to encase my zip. So I'm just going to mark it all and then cut it. And I'm going for the exact same length as my zip. And I'm cutting 2 pieces exactly the same. I've folded over the 10 centimeter marking and just ironed it straight, and now I can cut along there and then split this down the center so that I've got 2 equal parts. I've got my piece cut off, and now all I'm doing is taking the scissors and putting it underneath there, and I'm going to slice all the way to the end. I've got my 2 pieces cut, and now I'm taking them and just folding them in half, and then I'm going to run the iron over it so I can get a nice crisp line. So just fold both pieces in half. And now take the sides and fold them under 1 centimeter on both sides. And then we press those down. I've got my zip and my netting and the piece of material that we just made, and what I'm doing is I'm opening the material out like that, and then going to be pinning it as close to the zip like that as I can, so that I can encase my netting inside of that, and then just pin the whole thing to the zip. Because this material frays so much, I'm going to be taking my soldering iron and I'm just going to be cutting and sealing the edges. I've just got a piece of baking paper down, and now we see if it's hot enough to cut. So now the edges are not going to fray quite as easily. I've put my little cage onto my material, and I'm measuring out from the side 10 centimeters, and I'm going to be cutting 2 pieces exactly the same by extending each side by 10 centimeters. I've marked it up like that so that I know that my little piece is going to fit into this middle rectangle, and now I'm going to cut 2 pieces out exactly the same size. I've got both pieces cut out, and now I'm flipping them, and I'm going to be putting a 2 centimeter fold on each of them, one going this way and one going inwards, so that they're lining up like that, and then I'm just going to iron them down, and I'm doing that on all 4 sides. I've taken the little piece of cloth that I made and I've just wrapped it around the bottom, and now I'm going to be flipping this over so I can get the length of the material for the netting that I want. I've just wrapped it around really loosely like that so that I can get the position where to cut. So I'm going to be cutting because I find this a little bit fragile, in my opinion anyway, so I don't want to join and cut along here, so I'm going to be joining it right in the middle so that if it does fray, it's got quite a way to go before it gets totally destroyed. I've got it all marked up where I want to cut, so I'm just going to be cutting along my fold line here, and then I'm going to be burning it with the soldering iron to just seal it to help it stop running. I've just pinned everything in place to make sure that it's all fitting. I suggest you do that before you sew because it is quite an involved sewing process. And now we can start sewing it and putting it all together. I've cut 4 strips of material which are 2 centimeters wide, and I'm going to be sewing those along the join line because I don't think the material, this netting, is going to sew very nicely to join it. So just to reinforce it, I'm putting one at the top and one at the bottom, and then I'm just going to do straight stitching with my sewing machine. I actually changed my mind and I'm going to actually do zigzag. I've got my piece sewed together, and now we're going to work on the next step. We're going to be taking the green piece that we made, and in one of the corners on the two sides I've marked that we're going to be cutting these little squares out. So just on the two same side corners, so we just cut these pieces out. So the other side we're leaving intact for the time being. And now I'm separating the material. I've kept this part pinned together just so that it's all in place, and we're just separating that like that, and then we're going to pin this on the inside of the pieces of material. So I'm going to pin just onto the long piece for now, and then I'm going to close the material up, so I can still get those pins out. And then we're going to pin the material inside along the chalk line. I'm cutting the second piece and I'm making it about 3 centimeters larger than what I need, so that I've got a seam allowance, and I'm just cutting the same size piece up to my chalk line, and then I'm going to be flipping it because this is actually going to be making the front door, so I'm not cutting the rest of it until I get to put the zip on. So we just cut that the same size as our little chalk piece. Now we're going to slide that piece underneath the material as well, so that we can pin that all together. Now that you've got everything pinned in along the chalk line, we're going to sew all the way around the square of the chalk line, and then we're also going to be sewing just in the corner like that, and along this front one. So that's the extra piece of material that we put in. I'm going to sew it all together now. For this one I'm actually going to be using the straight sewer. I've got everything pinned on, and now I'm going to be working on the door. So what I've done is I've just folded the door over the top. That was the extra piece that we put in, and now I'm just going to take a marker and mark where we're going to cut this piece off, because this is where the zip's going to be going on. So hopefully we'll get a bit of a marking so we can cut it. So that just, you can barely see it, but at least I know where to cut. And now we're going to work on the back. The piece of netting that we joined to go all the way under, now we're going to just cut this section, so we can cut this out now. So I've got the one side cut, and now we're going to take the piece that came all the way over, and we're going to pin it onto the inside on the back like that. So that's just after cutting this piece. And to do the corners, that same piece that we've got that came all the way over the whole piece like this, I'm just taking and folding it or joining it along the side like that, so we've got the back closed in now. So there's this extra piece that hangs off, and then we're going to cut that off as well. Make sure you don't cut too close because, as I said, this does fray quite a bit. So I'm going to be cutting it about 3 centimeters away from where I need it, but I'm marking where I'm going to be sewing so that I can fold it over. I've marked, I don't know whether you can see it, where I'm going to be sewing, and now I'm just going to trim the excess off. I've trimmed all the excess off, so I've got quite a nice 3 centimeters that I can fold over to sew along my sew line just there. And I'm doing the same on the other side. I've cut 4 pieces of material which are 8 centimeters wide, and they are the length of my little dryer that goes all the way along the top, and then it's going to go down the back like that so that I can encase the part that we just cut off here. So we'll put one on the inside and one on the outside, and I'm just going to take it and I'm going to iron a 1 centimeter seam line on either side, and I'm putting that on both sides. My piece is ironed, and now I'm just going to be splitting them so that I've got 2 separate pieces. And now I'm taking the one piece, so I'm placing the outside one on and the other one will go on the inside. So just at the back where we've got the join here, I'm going to be covering that with the material. It'll go all the way around. I'm starting right at the corner here so that I can get it underneath this fold at the back, and then we're just going to pin it all the way around. At the top where it goes around, all I'm doing is taking it and folding it over like that, and then clipping it down or sewing it down when I get to sew. So it'll be just a square corner like that. I've had to change the netting because the dog's just ripped through this really fine one. So what I'm using now is I've just repurposing this rather nice thick netting which I have taken off an old trampoline. So it's quite nice and small, the flies are not going to get in there. But instead of going over the top of this one, I've just gone around the side like that and then cut out a square piece on the top and just lay it flat. And now I'm just going to be sewing that together. So as you can see, I've just laid it flat to go over each other, and then I've put a hem on one side and a hem on the other side so that it reinforces the seam on the top and on all the other sides. I've got the top all pinned on, and as you can see I've left an overflap, and now I'm taking one of the pieces of green material that we cut and I'm just going to be sewing it along the line of the pipe, and then I'll do the hems on the outside and on the inside once I've got these in place. And I'm putting these on the 3 sides going around the top. I've got the top part all sewed on, and I actually had to do it by hand because it kept slipping under my machine. So now I'm going to just be cutting this excess off. I've tacked my zip on and now it's ready for sewing. So I'm going to be sewing along the zip line, and I'm going to be sewing the seam edge down. I flipped my piece over so I can see exactly where to sew. So I'm going to be sewing just along this line here. I've got the zip sewed in, and now I can sew along the seam line. To hang the meat, I'm going to be using this long link steel chain, and so that the chain doesn't cut through the netting, what I'm doing is I'm taking a small piece of material and I'm going to be sewing it on the inside. So we've already put one on the outside, and now I'm going to be putting it on the inside, just so that chain doesn't tear my netting. To set the chains up for drying, I'm going to be using 2 of these assorted key rings, the long link chain, and I'm just using some lanyards because I just need the crab claws at the end. which is what I'm going to be using. I'm using a 3mm chain, and I've got 2 meters here. And of the assortment of key rings, I'm going to be using these 2 small ones. So I'm just going to be attaching one to the end of the chain, and then I'll measure the chain. To attach the chain, I've just threaded it through the key ring, and now I'm going to measure how much I need on the other side. And then I'm just attaching the crab claw to hold the chains together. And now I'm going to cut the rest off so that I can make another one. To do the corners for the base, I'm just taking the 2 pieces that we sewed together, and I'm just splitting them open, and then I've folded them in so that they make like little points, and I'm just going to be sewing straight along there, and I'm doing that on both sides. I've got both pieces sewed like that, and now all we have to do is just turn them inside out. You can cut these pieces off, but I'm leaving them on. And then we've got a nice crisp corner like that. Everything is sewed and put together, and now the last thing that we're going to be doing is to put the base on. So we're just going to, I'm going to first pin it all on, and then I'm going to sew it all the way around. And obviously this piece here is for the door, which we're going to attach inside the 2 pieces. I've got the base all pinned on, and now I'm just checking before I start sewing to see that my drip tray is actually going to fit once I've zipped it all up. So I'm just using an ordinary stainless steel tray for my drip tray. Everything's fitting perfectly, so now I can sew the bottom piece on. Once you've finished sewing, now just cut off all the little bits and pieces that you've got sticking off. I use an angle grinder to cut the chains to size, and now we can put them inside our little drying rack. I've got all my chains in, and I've got them hanging at different heights. So that's my little meat dryer completed. If you found this video helpful or you enjoyed it, please give it a thumbs up. Really appreciate it if you would subscribe. Thank you so much for watching.